Welcome to the pod focusing on the aftermath and recovery from the devastating Palisades fires of January 2025. Journalist Joel Pollak, entrepreneur Oren Ezra, and technology expert Ron Goldschmidt serve up to the moment vital news and information, discuss the ongoing recovery efforts, and introduce us to the individuals and trades who are playing key roles in rebuilding our cherished communities. We're diving into the deep end and learning quickly how we can move forward together. We know the pain because we're living real-time news, stories, resources, and insights on the ongoing recovery effort. Buckle up. We're three homeless guys.
Welcome to Three Homeless Guys, the podcast about the Palisades fire and the rebuilding effort. I'm journalist Joel Pollak here with technology expert Ron Goldschmidt and entrepreneur Oren Ezra. And today we are discussing hope and fear, Palisades at a crossroads. So this is a theme I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and it's something that has been on my mind for the last several weeks as we talk about the rebuilding effort. You see evidence that it's going on, and certainly when I talk to my neighbors, there's a lot of optimism, but there's also evidence that things aren't going well, and the more time you spend on social media, the more convinced you are that things aren't going well and won't go well. So I want to talk about all of that, but let's get to some news, and I'll let you guys start first because I have a little bit of an extended riff about some news related to programming issues. So, Ron, you look like you're ready to roll.
You're muted, Ron.
Let's go to the news.
You want to go to my news?
Yes, let's go to the news.
All right, we'll cut to my news.
I can see by the look on your face, it's more pressing than my stuff this week.
Well, let's start with the general news, then I'll get to the personal stuff. So, we had hoped to have a guest on this program, and specifically, I've been trying to get Rick Caruso for quite some time. And I like him a lot. You know, I've spoken very positively about him and his effort to save the Village Mall from the fire with private firefighting crews. I think that demonstrated what could have been done if the city leaders had really applied themselves, if they had taken responsibility, if they had thought things through. He had been the water commissioner many decades ago, and he understood the water problems that plague LA that would also hurt us during a fire. So he was ready. He built his mall with fire-resistant materials, all of that. He was prepared. He was a model of preparedness. I think that's something to emulate and admire, and I think it also means that he might have been a better mayor than Karen Bass, who he lost to in 2022. He may run for mayor again. He may run for governor. We don't know. And I've been critical of him as well, as other people have, even fans of his. And none of us is perfect, so we all are open to criticism. He went after President Trump for sending the California National Guard to protect federal buildings, federal property, to stop the rioting downtown. We talked about all of that, and I thought it was a bit of a cheap shot against the president to make a comment. I didn't think Caruso needed to make a comment at all, and his quote was something like, "There's no emergency in Los Angeles." And then later that day, there was violence and chaos, and I thought that looked pretty bad. I also think that anybody who's trying to keep law and order in LA deserves our support. I think if it were obvious that those efforts were going overboard, everybody would understand those efforts were overboard, but a lot of residents felt like we didn't want to see a repeat of 2020 when there were riots across the city where we had to be under curfew. Businesses were destroyed, public buildings were destroyed, and that's clearly what the intent was of some of the rioters. They didn't just attack the ICE officers, they didn't just attack federal property, they attacked LAPD, they also blocked the 101 freeway, they were spreading out beyond downtown. And it's my opinion, and I think I'm allowed to have this opinion, that Trump's intervention prevented the riots from spreading, not just within LA, but nationwide. I also understand there's a counter argument that it wasn't necessary, that it was all for show, it was politics. I get that. Karen Bass has made that argument. Gavin Newsom, our governor, has made that argument. Okay, fine. But I didn't think it was necessary, as far as the Palisades is concerned, for anybody who's really leading the rebuilding effort to weigh in any way with regard to their role, at least as a community leader. If you have a separate opinion about it, that's fine. I just thought it was unfortunate that Caruso weighed in. So I criticized him for that. But generally, I've been very supportive. And he was very gracious to meet with me a few months ago. And it was off the record, so I'm not going to talk about what he said, what I said, but it was a great meeting. And the one thing I will say is that he expressed an openness to coming on the show. I've approached his media people, his policy people, many, many times, many, many weeks. He's not avoiding the media. He certainly knows where to find the media. He goes on other podcasts all the time. And he has yet to agree to do this one. What's wrong with this podcast? There's nothing wrong with this podcast. This is not a political podcast. I have political views that are on the right, and I don't hide that, but I don't make them part of the show. And for me, politics went out the window in terms of Democrats and Republicans on January 7th. And I think that's true of all of our neighbors. People know that I'm a Trump supporter, that I'm a Republican, that I'm a conservative. And on social media, particularly on X, I make my partisan views very well known. I don't do it on Facebook because that's about friends, family, and neighbors. I tend to keep politics off of that, except when it comes to my support for Israel, which is more personal. So I do express that sometimes on Facebook. But generally, I keep partisan politics out of this and out of what I'm doing in the community. However, I do think that Caruso is getting advice to stay off of this podcast primarily because of me. And I want to talk about who he's getting advice from. And I want to do this again as diplomatically as possible because I want to invite him on the show and I want to work with him. And I also want to work with the people he's working with. But I want to make it clear that if those people are holding on to their politics and their partisanship and their feelings about Donald Trump or whatever else, they're doing a disservice to the community. They're not helping us and they're not helping Rick Caruso. So let me just say that Caruso appears to be getting advice from a Republican strategist in California named Mike Murphy. Mike Murphy, you might be familiar with him. He has a track record of wins and losses and so forth. He's been a successful political strategist. The most important thing about Mike Murphy for the purposes of this discussion is that he's very anti-Trump. Very anti-Trump. I don't remember any particular argument that I've had with him, but I am assuming, and I could be wrong, that Mike Murphy is telling Rick Caruso not to come on this podcast because of me. And I think it's unfortunate. I also think it doesn't help our politicians at this moment to be anti-Trump. My political advice would be not to take a stance on Trump, for or against. I think if you're running for mayor or governor in this state, you don't have to talk about Trump. You don't have to prove that you're not a Trump supporter. I think you can avoid that issue. I think that Gavin Newsom, and here I will make a political point, I think Gavin Newsom is doing a disservice to the residents of the Palisades and the state of California by fighting with Donald Trump in such a nasty way. I will say of the president as well, I don't think he is as engaged in helping our community. I've actually made this point on the podcast before. I'm a Trump supporter, but I wish the Trump administration were more involved. As you know, in that public meeting in the Palisades when he was there, I made the point that we need a special master to monitor the money. I haven't seen any movement on that either from the administration or from Congress. I've talked to people about it. I've tried to get it done. I'll continue talking to people about it, but right now nothing seems to be happening. And I've also acknowledged Ambassador Rick Grinnell, who has done a great job when he's on the ground in California, has a lot of other things going on. And he seems to have taken an approach now that is simply critical of the authorities in California. And maybe he's doing that in response to the behavior of Newsom and other people. I don't think that that's the ideal approach in the circumstances where both sides are working together. It would be better if they fought behind the scenes but cooperated in public. Nevertheless, that's where we are. I think both sides can improve is what I'm saying. But I think that going after Trump the way that Newsom is doing is alienating the administration. Newsom wants $40 billion from the Trump administration in fire aid, and we're not going to get it. We are not going to get it to fix our communities, to rebuild, if he keeps attacking Trump, mocking him, attacking him personally, calling him stupid and other things. I mean, that was one of the nicer insults. So I don't think the Trump thing matters, and I don't think that it helps anybody to be for or against. In this community, we just want to get the community rebuilt. We don't care who you voted for, except in terms of what they might do locally or on the state level to help us. So if Tracy Park's doing a great job, we're going to say Tracy Park's doing a great job. If she's not, we're going to say she isn't. Same thing with Lindsay Horvath, same thing with the mayor. I'm prepared to say the mayor's doing a great job. In fact, sometimes I've put out positive things about the mayor to the community when I think she's done something positive. For me, the only measuring stick is, are you helping us or hurting us? I do have other partisan views, and I'll have fights on other issues in other forums, but when it comes to the community, all I care about is whether you're helping us. I don't think Newsom is helping. And I also think that if they try to make Trump the issue, which is what Newsom seems to be trying to do, maybe they can redistrict the state or they can win some court cases and so forth, but they're not going to help us at all. There are $40 billion that we need, according to Gavin Newsom, that we're not going to get because you have to convince Congress to vote for it and the president to sign it. So Mike Murphy is advising Caruso, and I don't know the particulars of that advice, but I would like him to understand that you are not helping Rick Caruso or the Pacific Palisades if you are telling him, and I can't prove that you're telling him this, but if you are telling him not to come on this podcast, you are not helping. And I actually want to play a clip, Oren, if we have that video, of something Mike Murphy said not too long ago on a PBS show, Firing Line with Margaret Hoover, who's also been critical of Trump. And I want to play it because I think this is Mike Murphy at his best, actually, and I want to hold Mike Murphy to the commitments he makes in this statement. I don't agree with everything he says, but the general sentiment is one that I share, especially in this circumstance. Let's play that video.
The central argument the Democrats make is that a second Trump term could undermine the institutions of our democracy in a way that possibly could become irreparable. Yeah. This now has been essentially characterized as violent rhetoric by the right. So how do we engage on the real, the important contest before us and the policy consequences and the stakes of the election?
Right.
If any attempt to describe it is going to be called violent rhetoric.
And we have to be careful how precious we are about that. There's a civil way to say Donald Trump doesn't respect the rule of law. I don't want to live in this woke kindergarten where we can't criticize anything. It just means we don't have to call people traitors. And on the lefty side, this apocalyptic, jackbooted Trump, everything argued to the extreme. We can say Donald Trump lacks character. I think you can prove that. You can say Donald Trump has designs for the Justice Department that are different than any president ever and would be a threat to civil liberties. You can argue that calmly and factually. It's the screaming end of the world stuff and the name calling. It doesn't work politically. It's tiresome. The problem is our politics are so tribally narcissistic now. Inside each tribe, they have a contest to see who can out-scream the worst end of the world insult about the other side. It makes them feel good. You got to get the fundamental things about what are we as citizens and what is citizenship and why the Constitution counts. Not their evil, destroy them. Because that cancels each other out. Doesn't move the needle, doesn't win the election. It just coarsens everything even more.
What Mike Murphy is saying there is we don't get anywhere either politically or as a community by calling each other names and fighting and pushing things to the extreme and calling the other side extremists. So my appeal to Mike Murphy and hopefully to Rick Caruso is don't avoid this podcast because of my politics or anybody else's politics. People come onto this podcast, elected Democrats, conservatives, liberals. We talk about what's happening in the community. It is bad advice to tell Rick Caruso to avoid platforms like this. And it doesn't help politically because in these nonpartisan elections that we have for local office, you're going to need the votes of Trump supporters. Just like Republicans are going to need Democratic votes to win in LA, Democrats are going to need Republican votes. So you have to appeal to everybody on issues of local importance, and you can't write people off, nor can you assume that they're going to support you. If you insult what they care about, they're not just going to vote for you because you're better than the alternative. You need people to turn out for you, and we need good leadership now. So don't force us to give up on you by giving up on us. And we're all at the stage, and this is going to get into the discussion we're going to have, where we're on the edge between hope and fear at the moment. a lot of us, individually and collectively. So I'm going to invite Rick Caruso one more time. Please come on the show. Please do not listen to people who tell you not to come on the show. This is the show you want to be on. You go on everyone else's show. I'm actually tired of being told you can't come on this show, or that people are trying but they're not getting any results. We can also be negative. I don't want to be negative, so I'm doing this diplomatically, but I'm saying publicly, you are a key mover in our community. The success of what you're doing is crucial to the success of our community. Let's talk about it so we can help you and you can help us understand what's going on. With that, I'll throw it open. I'm sorry I ranted for so long.
Well, I think overall we've been extremely bullish and positive on Rick Caruso on this show, and because we look around, there's just not a ton of other folks that are like calling for overall the rebuild in the way that he is, are trying to throw their hands behind like rebuild efforts, are trying to like use the Palisades as a case study for how LA in general can come back. And so I think we've been very positive on Rick Caruso. I'm actually like surprised he doesn't want to come on the show, because again, we don't really go into like Trump, not Trump on this show a lot. But I think what you're seeing here is a symptom of like what we're seeing, to some extent in the larger society. And like, we saw it this last week with what's happening in DC. You have Trump coming in and trying to like essentially make life better for folks in DC. And Joel, you spend a lot of time there. And I think the overall majority of like people in DC are in favor, especially the people that are getting hurt by the violence. And you're seeing it every day. You're seeing interviews. People are like, yes, it's great. I can walk outside without gunshots being fired. It's awesome. But then you have the media, which takes that story and makes it into like, Trump is trying to enforce some kind of, agenda here. And the reality on the ground is that what he's doing is good. And I've run into this like in my personal life too, is like, it seems to me like no matter what he does, or if he does positive things, people are just not willing to like call that out as a positive thing. As he says himself, like he could cure cancer tomorrow and, still like, 50% of people are going to hate him. And I think that we're seeing that in DC, and like we're seeing it to a large extent in LA as well, like where the lawlessness, homelessness, all of that is becoming worse. And so Caruso is like the best, of what we have so far, is like the way I see it. Like we don't have anybody that's running right now that's shown or showcased any better, policies than he has. I'd love for him to come on the show. I think like some of the stuff that he's said in the past, I think his some of the things that he said, the reason it like I think irks some of us is because when he comes out against ICE and against some of the lawlessness that we experienced that week, at the same time he's coming out like asking for law and order, asking for things to be corrected on the Palisades side, and all the things that happened that were wrong on the Palisades fires. It sounds like it sounds like the same side of the argument. Like, let's have law and order, and when he doesn't do that, and he goes against the ICE raids, or he says that they should be rounded up and like sent out of state or whatever he said, it sounds inauthentic. And I think that's the bigger problem. It sounds like he's pandering to like a political wing, or maybe to some of his advisors. And I wish he didn't do that, because I think that takes away from his message. Because we all know him, and I've only met him like in passing a couple of times at the community events, etc. I don't know him personally at all, but he sounds like I think he's a good man. I think he's got his heart in the right place. I think he should be running for office. I think he's the best of what we got right now, and I hope that he runs for office. But when he does those things, it sounds inauthentic, and I think that's part of the reason why he lost the mayoral election. Like, quite frankly, I think I think we're past the days where like you have to pander to some elements. I think you just have to go with your heart, and if you believe something, you just kind of like go with it. And like, I don't think you need to listen to your political advisors. And I know California is a super political state, but that's what I'd like to see. And I don't know if it's true or not. I'd love to ask him on the show. We've been super positive about him on the show. And before I throw it back to Oren, we talk about lawlessness and in the state. I was on the phone with Oren yesterday, like on a phone call, and I know he's going to bring it up. But like, this is some of the stuff that we're seeing, and he's like literally telling me, "I'm driving." Oren, you tell the story of what happened yesterday, and we'll take it from there.
So I'm on my way to work. I'm driving on Canoga, and I'm on the phone with Ron, and I'm like, "Dude, I have to hang up. I have to call 911." He's like, "What happened?" I'm like, "There is a guy standing over here with an M16, holding in his hand an M16." Now, I don't know if it was like a toy M16 or if it was a real M16, but I'm driving on Canoga. A guy standing on the side of the street with a M16, where there is usually like, it used to be like a huge, all over Canoga in a Chatsworth area. There used to be like all the time like tents and stuff. I don't see the tents anymore in the last couple of weeks, but I also, I always see like a lot of homelesses. And this is like, I don't know, 2 minutes from my work. And I see a guy standing on the side of the road with an M16. Now, the fact that like middle of Los Angeles, the police were immediately over there. I don't know what happened, if they caught him or they didn't catch him. They called me to get some more information after that. I hope they caught him. But even if it's like a toy M16, I don't think somebody like this need to be, hanging at the streets. But I think it's leading us back to like the core of the conversation, that this city and a lot of cities in Los Angeles, in Los Angeles County, in California, in the States at all, is being ran like horrible way in every point that we touch. I don't know, me as a business owner, I can start telling you stories from now until like for hours now. As somebody that is a house burned down, the cause of the fires, we've been through it, like it's crazy. Nobody is running it. The rebuild, it's crazy. Nobody is running it. The insurance issues that we're having, it's crazy. Nobody is running it. Show me one thing that somebody is running right. I don't know, one thing. Give me like one example, like the let's say people came over here 20, 30 years ago, right? Came here in a illegal way. I have like a lot of people that I know that came over here illegally, been working here for 20, 30 years. Okay, they're here already. They have their family. They have their kids. They're not criminals. Instead of taking money from them, we're giving them food stamps. How does it make sense? So I think every point that we've touched on the podcast, I don't see anybody that's running this city, state in the right way.
I think like some of the difference in between what like the Palisades, Malibu communities and maybe some of the outside communities is like, I really believe like that we've hit rock bottom with this fire. But I think like once you go outside of our community, you don't see that. Like people have not experienced that rock bottom. They didn't get robbed just yet, or not all of them, right? Like they're kind of like trudging along. Like the system seems to be working. For us, the system collapsed. That when the fires happened, like it hit us right in the face, like the entire community, basically burnt down. But like we're still a very small segment of LA, and once you go outside, even today, like people don't really understand like what's happening right inside those communities. They don't understand what damage happened.
I look at it slightly differently. I think you're right that people haven't had that experience happen to them in such a profound way, but at the same time, they also didn't have it as good as we did. My experience of LA after the fire was being reminded of how unlivable a lot of even the nice areas of LA are. And I think that we had a quality of life in the Palisades. I'm not talking about the things people usually talk about, home values, and some people had nice cars, good schools, that kind of thing. I mean just the basic everyday experience of life, getting up and being able to go to work, to drive without having to have homeless people bang on your car window at a traffic light, which happened to me when I was living in Beverlywood a couple months ago. The insane amount of traffic in a neighborhood like Pico Robertson, where you're constantly having to duck behind parked cars as you move down the street. You can't even go one block in an ordinary fashion. You're constantly weaving. And there's been no investment in the city's infrastructure. And just looking back over 15 years in LA, Pico Robertson declined significantly. And it's a neighborhood I go to often. I have a sister there and do a lot of my kosher shopping there and that kind of thing. And it's just declined. I mean, there are homeless tents, or there were until very recently, simply on the sidewalk. And they would clear people out and they'd be back again the next day or the next week. I think people have become used to such a low standard of service that the crash for us from so high to rock bottom was much worse. So I agree with you that we've hit rock bottom in a way other people haven't. But also we saw a different way of living. We believed that you could have the best of small town America inside LA. That's what Palisades and Malibu felt like. Everybody knew their neighbors. Doors were unlocked until late at night. Kids ran around from yard to yard. You would take the public buses to get from where I lived in Marquez Knolls to downtown Palisades. I had no problem putting my kids on the bus and sending them a couple stops down to go have fun at the mall and then come back again on their own. That was how life was like. That's what it was like when I was growing up in a much less dangerous time. That's what it's still like in some parts of the country. And we had it. And in LA, you wouldn't do that anywhere else. And I think, why have we accepted such low expectations? Why can't we have a better life? And, you know, the criticism of that question would be, oh, well, it's only because of your privilege that you even expect that, right? Because only the rich white people in Palisades get to even have that question, get to demand that standard. And I don't think so. I think that the California dream is something that still draws people to California. But the problem, and this comes back to Caruso, the problem is that people are leaving. And so it's not enough just to say, well, I'm better than the other candidate. The voters are going to have a choice between one or the other. The problem is that your voter base is leaving. That's why Republicans can't win in California anymore, because after Schwarzenegger, when his promises of reform didn't pan out, a lot of people really started leaving California. That's been my experience anyway. A lot of the homeowners, small business owners started leaving. That's the traditional voter base of the modern Republican Party. You're not going to get Republican votes if people are leaving to Nevada and Utah and Idaho and Florida and Texas. And yes, a lot of Democrats are leaving too, but it's that particular group, those demographics are leaving. And the people who are staying are the very rich and the very poor. And those are the groups today that vote Democratic. So Republicans basically have lost their voter base. And we in the Palisades are Rick Caruso's voter base. I think 2/3 of Palisades voters chose Caruso over Bass in the last election. But the problem is, we might not stay in town. There's been a lot of talk about how you can keep your voter registration. If you're displaced by the fire, you can still vote in Palisades in LA. That's great. But a lot of people are going to leave, and not by choice. And people who do have a choice want a reason to stay engaged. And you can't write people off and expect them to stick around. And the problem with ignoring people who are angry at the current administration, if they happen to vote for the wrong presidential candidate or the wrong political party, is you're not going to keep those people engaged, and they're just going to leave. And that's, unfortunately, and we've talked about this before, that's the easier choice for a lot of Californians, not just people in the Palisades who, you know, we're obviously in a worse position. But in America, you can vote with your feet if you can't vote at the ballot box to get change. And people will put up with a worse climate or worse traffic or whatever it is to have some control over their own lives. And that's all we're asking for. So I think that our leaders, people who want to lead our community, should be talking to everybody and should not be playing the usual games. It's just, it's old. It's old. And I would say that about the administration too. I am not on board for the idea that a Republican administration can just sit back and watch California fail because it's run by Democrats. I just don't think that cuts it anymore. I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but I think there's a danger of that if this fight continues the way it has. And I think everybody has to grow up and just get this done.
I think I've said it on the show. I think I've said it on the podcast before, where from an administration perspective or at the federal level, I kind of saw the playbook playing out by they don't want to intervene right now because basically like all the same people that don't like them right now will still don't like them unless those people hit rock bottom. And so I think like what the federal level is doing is like waiting for things to hit rock bottom, which they surely will. Not just for us, but like for the entire state. And I think that's a terrible like way of looking at things, but I think that's what's happening. Because right now, if we saw federal intervention, you still have all the same people that are going to be hating on the federal administration. So like maybe wait for things to bottom out and then come in as the conquering hero. Maybe that's the same thing you saw in DC, and maybe that's the playbook for LA.
Let me talk about DC a little bit, because I'm here in Northwest DC. They call this neighborhood Embassy Row. I'm in DuPont Circle, which is the trendiest, gayest part of DC, very artsy, and a lot of embassies here. I've got the Argentinian embassy over there, the Polish embassy over there, the Moroccan embassy over there. I could basically bring them apple pie as a neighbor because I'm basically surrounded by them. I've got embassies from countries whose flags I don't even recognize. I mean, but this is the nicest part of DC. It has the most private security cameras, police presence, Secret Service driving through all the time. Where are there protests against Trump taking over the local police and bringing in the National Guard? Here, in this neighborhood. This morning at the train station, there were a bunch of people protesting against Trump for taking over the police, and they were saying things like, get fascism out of DC, free DC. Okay, where aren't there protests? Everywhere else in DC, where the crime actually is, in the poor black neighborhoods of Northeast and Southeast, where kids can't afford private schools, so they're stuck in the failing public schools here, and they're at risk of losing whatever scholarships or vouchers they have, and where there are massive problems. I mean, you see crime. I've seen crime already in DC in the short time I've been here. A couple of days ago, I took my son on the train to take him to basketball camp, and there was a young teenager who just jumped the turnstile at the train station, and there was a DC Metro official sitting there who did nothing. And I feel like the police don't think they can do anything about that kind of ordinary low-level crime, which eventually becomes much higher-level crime, because if they intervene, there's a chance of a confrontation, and if there's a confrontation, then they get accused of brutality. And so the police don't have any power to stop this ordinary low-level crime, including just ordinary crime on the transportation networks. And what having the National Guard and the federal government involved does is it says, okay, we're going to back you up. You're going to enforce these laws. We're not listening to this local debate right now for the next 30 days. We're going to be here. We're going to shore you up. And that frees the police to be police. And I was on a BBC show, and the guy they interviewed was a guy named Richard Stengel. So it was me and Richard Stengel. Richard Stengel used to work in the Obama administration. I think he was an editor of Time magazine. And he said, well, Trump calling in the National Guard is like what we saw in Germany in the 1930s. And I said, if I were to make up a caricature of something that a liberal columnist would say, it would be, you're going to compare Trump to Hitler no matter what the issue is. Trump is Hitler. Trump is Hitler. I live in LA, or I just came from LA. Trump had the National Guard in LA, and then he pulled them out again. He had the Marines in LA, and then he pulled them out again. Did California turn into the Third Reich because Trump took over some policing functions in LA for a short period of time? It didn't. And I don't think it's going to happen in DC either. So I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, well, I hope you're right. But the problem, again, with this kind of name calling that Murphy was talking about is that it prevents people from thinking rationally. So Trump's trying to help DC, and the only people protesting are the people in the safest part of DC. So to them, it's about fascism. But to the ordinary residents of DC, it's, hey, finally someone listened to us. Does that mean they're going to vote Republican? They're not going to vote Republican. DC is going to be 97% Democrat. But sometimes the right thing is worth doing anyway. And I'm glad Trump didn't give up on DC. Now, he lives here now. Obviously, he's the president, so he has some sense of pride in the place. But he's also a property owner in California. I don't think that the United States can survive or thrive if California collapses. I don't think it can. I think that LA is too important. San Francisco is too important. These are cities that cannot be allowed to fail. That doesn't mean they can automatically expect bailouts and help and so forth. They have to take a step in the right direction. But I feel like everybody's got an investment in our success. And right now, as you say, nobody's leading. And Oren made this point in a previous podcast. It's at every level. It's not just state and local. It's also federal. We don't feel, yes, the federal government did a good job getting rid of the hazardous waste, doing the debris clearance. I have to say also the Small Business Administration has been amazing because they've been very proactive in coming up with new loan products and expanding the loans they offer. So the federal government, for the most part, FEMA, maybe not so much, but the federal government mostly has been pretty active, pretty engaged. And the danger, I think, Ron, you pointed out previously, was now that that's over and they leave, we feel abandoned. And that can't be allowed to drag on because people are going to give up. They're going to give up on rebuilding their homes. They're going to give up on recreating the community. And I'll say some more about that in a minute, but I want to give you guys a chance to respond.
Yeah, so like I just saw something that Arnold Schwarzenegger said this morning, and it's going back to your point, Joel, with Rick Caruso not coming on this on the podcast, and he said that the battle is not between the Democrats and the Republicans. The battle is basically between the politician to the people. And that's how I feel. I don't care if it's like a Republican or if it's a Democrat. Whoever is sitting over there need to serve us. And right now, whoever is the political party that is controlling the city, controlling the state, it doesn't matter to me. If I wake up in the morning and somebody is helping me to rebuild, if I wake up in the morning and I don't need to see anybody walking with a gun on the street, I'm happy, and you guys talked about the fact that Palisades was great and it was safe, and I think it was just an illusion, Other places, at least you see how horrible it is. In our neighborhood, we just didn't see it, but it was there. Like if you would walk out at the tracks, and I know that Joel, you love hiking. If you would go out and hike, and you would see that nobody cleared the brush. Now that you understand how dangerous it was, you would say, hey, you know what? It's even worse than having like a couple of tents of homelesses on the street. I just got back from Solvang area, and you see there is private ranches that take care of everything around the trees. They have cows that eat the brush. Everything is cleared, and I talked to a couple of the people that work over there. They said, you know what, we've been able to save ourselves from a very dangerous fires here in the last few years because we take care of it. Nobody's taking care of I live right now in the Agora, and in Agora there is tons of mountains around. The brush is being cleared only around the roads, So I'm sure that next time there is a big fire, if something is getting there, something will happen. So again, I think that we're in a fight. We're in a fight between us to the politician. I think it's very sad that people like Rick Caruso or whoever wants to run for governor for the LA city, doesn't matter where. You need to come and talk to the people, and you need to work for the people. I don't feel that anybody did anything for us. I'm still struggling with my insurance. Yesterday we had a funny story, me and Ron. I told Ron, hey, I think I figured it out. I think I know how to finally get the money after 7-8 months for everything that I lost in the house. That's what I'm going to do. Ron started laughing. He's like, dude, I did it 2 months ago, and I can tell you what will be the next letter after you send them this. So they have a playbook. State Farm has a playbook how to play us, and we're sitting there ducks in a shooting range. And everybody just do whatever they want. And the politician, I don't know if, I don't know why, but none of them is helping us. None of them. And I know that Joel, you have a couple of politicians that you really like, and they came on the podcast. I didn't see one thing that helped Oren, okay? Let's put me as the small person, that his house burned down. I didn't see one politician that helped me in anything, not in the debris removal. Until today, people that got their debris, and we talked about it so many times over here, until today, people that got their debris removed by the federal over here. Don't know how much it will cost them. Not with my insurance, not with anything. I didn't get any help. So again, I think what Arnold Schwarzenegger said, I don't know if it was today or yesterday, I think it was today, that the fight here is between the political to the people, the between the whoever is running this city or state to us is 100% spot on.
Can I just jump in before Ron quickly, just to respond to something? So I agree with you, and I want to just give an example of a time where I supported someone I don't generally support, but you know, Mayor Bass, okay, I'm not a fan. But I had a Republican friend come to me and say, hey, have you seen the latest statement from Karen Bass? She's trying to blame the lack of rebuilding on the insurance companies. And he showed me the statement she put out maybe about a week ago saying the insurance companies have to come to the party. It's taking them too long to pay. And so the way he saw it was she's trying to blame the insurance companies for everything. And I said, but you know what? She's right. She's right. Like if you ask me what the main problem in my life is right now, it's not getting paid by the insurance company. So I'm not going to criticize her. I'm not going to say she's trying to blame the insurance company. We've done plenty of things about how rebuilding is taking too long and the permits and everything. But if she goes after the insurance companies, I'm 100% on her side because they are really failing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all are in the same boat, and the reality is like there's nobody going after the insurance company right now. We have a commissioner that's completely mute on the subject. I know there's like legal process and law that needs to take place, but like there's nothing happening. There's nothing happening really. Like I appreciate like Joy Chen's efforts, and I think that in the long term they might provide a solution, like you know in terms of like going after some of these companies legally, etc. But right now, like, you know, I feel like there's nothing being done on that front. And just going back to like what Oren said earlier about the Palisades in Malibu, I think the Palisades in Malibu were small enough where we could curate some of our life around, you know, like not to see the really bad things that are happening out there, right? You can go to the village, you can have like nice stores run by Caruso, and like you could curate, you don't have to see like the nasty stuff that's going on in everywhere else in California, or like you know, or the schools even. I'll give you an example, like you know, even Pali, which was Pali High, which was a great school, while it was in our community, now is like not in our community anymore, and it's terrible, right? Like I have a kid going there, and I had to pull him out because it was the first week of school, and you know they went there and they're like, this is awful. Like I don't want to go here, and like you know, and this is some of the stuff that's happening is like once you have to go out into the big bad world out there. And so like we can't curate our life anymore. I think we're facing with some of that reality right now. And just I want to touch back on something that you said, Joel, which is like, you know, the DC takeover. You know, you would think that most, you know, if you were to look at the media, you would think like this is like, you know, a 50-50 issue. It's not. It's like the overwhelming majority of people are happy that this is happening, including the people that live there. This is an 80-20 issue. I feel like we see that across so many things right now, where it's like an 80-20 issue that the media takes and makes it appear as a 50-50 issue, which it is not. Okay? Like most people are supporting like whether you're going to vote for him or not. Most people that live in DC and most people see that's what's going on are like supportive of law and order. And that's an 80-20 issue. And there's many, many issues like that on the docket today, like that we see every day, that the media makes it seem like it's a 50-50 issues that you know, society's divided on. And it's not divided on at all. So I think to add to like Oren's point, where the political class is trying to divide us, it's also the media that's trying to divide us. I can't hear you, Joel. You're on mute.
Oh, right. I'm just getting a note from Oren here who said his internet is down. So we'll hope that he can rejoin us in a minute. But let me talk a little bit about some of the personal stuff going on. So again, it's a tale of two communities, right? So on the one hand, let me give you the positive. Again, I continue to be impressed by the local leadership of people in the community who are stepping up and doing things. Temescal Canyon reopened. Obviously, that's not just a local community thing. Lots of different agencies involved in that, but that's reopened. Businesses are reopening all the time. Vittorio's, which was an institution in the Lower Marquez Knolls, has reopened, I think, on Channel Road for takeout in Santa Monica. So everybody's finding a way to move forward. My neighbors are doing an incredible job of helping each other rebuild. And I had the first board meeting a few days ago of the Marquez Knolls Volunteer Fire Department, which I started with help, again, from some neighbors, a pro bono lawyer who came in to help us organize everything. And we've got an incredibly enthusiastic group of people who understand that as the community is rebuilt, we're going to have a role to play in providing our own emergency services to some extent, not to let the city off the hook in terms of the services we pay for with our taxes, but to provide evacuation routes and training and traffic control and maybe some first response in the event of fires and earthquakes and communications and checking the brush, making sure that people know what to do, that the signage is done properly, whatever it is that we can do to get our community in better shape, we are already starting to do. So it's incredibly exciting. At the same time, I don't know how you and Oren are dealing with it, but the insurance issue is becoming make or break for me right now. And I have a house that I defended. I was able to get in there during the fire. I put out the fires on my fence with my bare hands. And we've talked about this before, but I am still in a position where I might be forced in some way to sell the house or lose the house because of the insurance position. And I'm in DC right now. My wife took a job in the Trump administration, and I think that was the right choice for our family, but we want to come back in 2 years' time. The plan is to come back in 2 years. The hope was and remains to fix our house and then rent it out for a couple of years and then come back. However, there are other things happening, particularly with insurance, that are making that plan very difficult to execute. And there's no reason we shouldn't be able to do it in terms of income, in terms of involvement. We're organized. We're ready to roll on the repairs. I've got the contractors lined up and ready to go. But I'm having this issue with the insurance company. I know you've had it, Ron, with the list of contents and the back and forth. And it is unbelievable that it's taken this long. And I do think that they're dragging it out. And my wife and I are not conspiracy theorists. We're probably the last people to believe in conspiracies. But this does seem to be a deliberate strategy by the State Farm Insurance Company, maybe others as well, to delay paying us and maybe to force us out of our homes. And then you start wondering, okay, well, who benefits if people are forced to sell and they have to leave? Because we have one of the most desirable lots in the Palisades. It's outside the Coastal Commission. It's outside the Hillside Commission. You can do whatever you want on this lot. And it's next to the school. It's near the beach. I mean, we lucked out when we got this house, and someone else is going to try to get very lucky if we have to sell it. And you wonder, like, what's going on? So, it really is a make or break point for us, because the longer they wait, the more difficult it gets for us to hang on to this plan. And we may be forced to sell. And that doesn't mean leaving the community. It certainly does pull up one of the anchors. We are still part of the community. I'm still involved in the community, but I can't invent money. I can't, money doesn't grow on trees, even in Washington. And this is a solvable problem that is just not getting solved. And I get so frustrated that, and I know I'm not alone. I mean, other people have said to me, not just, whether you have a house or don't have a house, you're watching the political drama play out, and the governor with his little press office account on X, imitating Trump and making fun of Trump, while the lots are empty, while the people struggle to get insurance, and the governor's playing this game. And it's so discouraging. I want to say one other thing before I throw it back to you. When there are people who do the right thing, and I'm going to bring up somebody in particular. I want to talk about Jennifer Thompson from After the Fire, who we interviewed on the show a while back. And she is from a completely different place politically than I am. In fact, the first conversation I had with her wasn't so great because we were having an argument over something political. And we set that aside and we talked to one another. And she's the reason we got connected with Joy Chen. And Joy Chen is the reason so many Palisades residents are now connected to the Eaton Fire Survivors Network. And it's the reason so many Palisades neighborhoods are now getting more organized around things like Slack or Discord servers or whatever it is. But that connection came through this podcast, and it came because Jennifer Thompson was willing to put politics aside, and because we were willing to put politics aside. I mean, I could get into stories. I don't want to get bogged down in this politician and that politician, but basically, I have disagreed publicly with some people on my side, some Republicans, some conservatives, about the Palisades in Malibu, and I have agreed with her on certain things. Why can't everybody do that? I'm not saying I'm always right about this sort of thing, but I feel like there's room for criticism, and this is where the social media accounts come in, and we want to get some of these people on the show. I mean, I want to interview Spencer Pratt about what he's talking about, and he's being very confrontational, and I think that helps. You got to keep the heat on people, but is it helping confidence in the rebuild? Maybe not. Okay. But okay, there's room for that, but there also has to be room for people to put things aside and just do the right thing. It's not that hard, and yet we're finding it really difficult.
Yeah, I think the only thing we can do on the insurance front is it's keep the heat on, and that means like filing grievances with the state, documenting everything you're doing with insurance, so it leaves room for litigation later on for bad faith claims and all the things that Joy is talking about in terms of like dealing with State Farm. There's just like no other way to deal with it other than just to fight and like kind of slap a bully in the face. Like that's what you have to do. Like you have to be very confrontational, very legal, and just go to battle, because that's the only way. I can assure you, like, I don't think that the insurance companies on like the wider, conspiracy front are like trying to like take away a lot. They've just done the math. Like they have done the math. They are okay with the bad faith claims. They're okay with like dragging things out, and they just are trying to hang on to those monies for as long as possible. And so they'll keep on trying to drag it along, short of, the other side like punching them in the face and, threatening litigation, complaining with the state, documenting every conversation you're having so you could have a claim later, which there will be a massive like bad faith claim against State Farm, I can only assume, at some point. It's just like you have to do all of those things because you're dealing with a bully. And when you deal with a bully, there's no negotiating with bullies. You just have to like just punch them.
Yeah, I think that's
Go ahead,
their
Oren.
business plan. Their business plan is to like hold on to the money every month. That the money is there in their pocket, making like money on top of it. Even if they know that eventually they will need to pay the fight, it's worth it for them. And again, it's going back. You know what? I don't blame them. They're running their business. It's fair. No, it's not fair. Most of people that I know that have been very successful in business are not running a fair business. Like let's say 90% of the people that I know, when they sit on the table, they the big. Hopefully, like me and my wife had a discussion about it, and she said, I wish that the really, really, really successful people would be the really, really fair and honest people. And take it back to the people that you guys know, is the people that are really, really, really successful. Like if you take like 10 very successful people that are those the people that are sitting in front of somebody and, hey, I want to be really fair when we do this deal? Probably not. So I'm not blaming State Farm. I'm just like, I'm blaming our politicians.
I think it depends, right? I mean, I've met people, let's just take Donald Trump for a second. I've met a lot of people who did business with him. And some of them, including some Palisades neighbors who moved from New York at some point, said they would never do business with him again, that he paid them late, that everything was a fight. And then I've met other people who worked with him who said he changed their lives, he opened up worlds of opportunity. I mean, I guess it depends who you talk to. You can have different experiences in different situations. I do think that generally speaking, it's better to be fair with people and honest with people, because the cost is so big in the long run, and that's the cost for the insurance companies. I think it is reputational. I mean, does State Farm get its reputation back after this?
I don't see the
I don't think they're taking a reputational hit at all. I don't think they. I still see like I'm shocked because I see like I watch like the commercials and stuff. Like they still get celebrity endorsers. They get new celebrity endorsers. Like coming all the time. Every sports star is starring in their commercials.
Like a good neighbor.
Every season, like a good neighbor. Like I don't think they've taken a reputational hit.
Who's
at
the
all.
quarterback who's in their ads?
Mahomes.
Mahomes, yeah. Patrick Mahomes.
Mahomes, like they've got like they've got like 10 NBA stars, and I'm telling you, like I don't think they've taken a reputational hit at all because like we're just a small community. No, I don't think anybody outside the Palisades of Malibu cares, honestly. And if you look at the math, and let's do it again, like we've done back of the envelope math before on this show. I'm going to tell you what they're thinking. It's okay. They say they have about $8 billion in claims. Okay, $8 billion in claims, and they probably they've probably paid maybe a third of that out. So that means like there's $5 billion in claims remaining. If they can hang on to that money every month and they get, they probably earn 7, 8, 9% on it, like with their, internally, it's $50 million a month, okay, that they get to hang on to. So if at the end of the day they can hang on to the money for another year, it's $600 million. And they've done the math, and if they get sued at the end of the day for bad faith, and they'll probably lose a couple $100 million on that, they're still ahead. And that's the math that they're doing internally.
Just sort of random observation. State Farm is headquartered in Bloomington, Illinois, which is one of the more boring towns you'll ever go to. I've been there many times as a former Illinois resident, but, it's not like Illinois is that well run either. It doesn't have too many natural disasters. I guess they have tornadoes out there in that part of the Midwest, but I just think, how is it that Illinois, which is such a dysfunctional state, even more dysfunctional than California, okay? How is it that we have a company that's based in Illinois, basically in charge of our lives? To me, it's just like, I don't know. Where did the model of American success go? Where did it go? We're just sort of led by people in general. I'm not meaning anyone specific now, but like we're led by people who are managing failure. And like what you're talking about is, they can make money by managing this failure. Instead of saying, hey, we'll be a good neighbor. We'll help you rebuild. Let's talk about moving forward together. They're just like, okay, we'll let the money sit there and make our interest or whatever. Anyway,
I don't think they've taken a reputational hit. I think that's another front to fight on, is like how to make that reputational hit, take hold. But again, like everybody's like fighting their own battles, and it's hard to like organize on so many different levels. You've already got like 50 million things going on in our lives, but long term, I feel like that's probably another front we have to open against all the offending insurance companies.
I want to just apologize to Bloomington, Illinois. I don't want anyone getting offended. I have a friend who has a pizza joint there, so I'm sure it has a fun side. I'm just picking on it because that's where State Farm is located, and I'm not a fan at the moment. Can I make one other point just before we close out, which is about the social media stuff and Spencer Pratt and everything? I want to talk about this because I feel like we got to kind of get it out into the open. But I feel like, I think I sent you guys a link that he posted on Instagram, and he said he caught Newsom in a lie because Newsom claimed that he sent 105 fire trucks or something in advance of the Palisades fire, but they only sent something like 40 or whatever it was, and they got a Freedom of Information Act submission back from the state or public records, whatever it was. And I went back and looked at all the press releases that Newsom sent out because I have all of them on file. And I felt like initially I was like, wow, Spencer, you really uncovered something. That's actually good journalism. You did a public records request and you showed that what Newsom is claiming about his response to the fire was actually inaccurate. That's good to know because I'm sure it'll help people in their lawsuits and that sort of thing. And then I looked at the Newsom press release and I thought, wait a minute, maybe Spencer's confusing two different things, because Newsom actually had both of Spencer's numbers in his press release on January 7th. Newsom said, we pre-deployed 105 firefighters to Southern California, and then I think it was like 45 or 46 fire trucks. So the two numbers that Spencer was saying contradict each other they were actually describing two different things, and they were both in the same press release. So it actually wasn't this like great gotcha moment. But the one thing Spencer did point out is that for all these resources Newsom deployed, not one of them went to the Palisades, and not one of them went to the place where the fireworks fire had been burning on January 1st. So I think in that story, you kind of have both the positive and the negative of some of the social media commentary, because I'm generally skeptical of a lot of the stuff on social media. I think it's too negative. I think that, Kevin Kiley, the Republican from Northern California, came in way too hot on fire aid. At the same time, he had a point. Why is fire aid spending on voting organizations instead of relief organizations? I think he criticized too many organizations. Some of them are doing good stuff, but whatever. I feel like what Spencer did there was maybe give information that turned out not to be accurate, but his point was accurate, which is that they didn't do what they needed to do and what they ought to have known to do to protect the community. So I kind of feel like we have this double-edged sword with social media now. And my fear is, on the one hand, they discourage people from being optimistic about rebuilding. On the other hand, there's a lot to be discouraged about. So, I want to be optimistic and positive, and then I run into the insurance wall, and then I'm right there with everybody who's like throwing a tantrum.
But listen, there is something about being optimistic and being realistic. It's great to be optimistic. I would love to rebuild, I would love to move forward. I actually kind of enjoy it, looking at plans, designing, all of these things. But there is like so many red tapes. And like I said, give me one example of somebody that helped Oren to rebuild. Money from insurance, permits, anything. Give me one example, debris removal, whatever it is. Give me one example of something that have changed. And I'm telling you guys, and I've been saying it from the beginning, I believe all of this, there is something behind it. There is like somehow somebody want to take the Palisade. I don't know who is behind it, but somebody want to take the Palisade, build the buildings over there. Somebody's going to make a lot of money out of it. That's why we're not going to see any help from politicians. We're not going to see any help from insurance company. Again, I really, really hope that you guys will prove me wrong. And Joel, I know that I'm going to get a text from you after the the pod. Hey, we need to keep positive. Please, I want to keep positive. Give me for the next pod, whoever listening to us, give me reasons to keep positive. And I've been to houses of people that rebuild their houses after the Uzi fire, and they're telling me, hey, it was a long process, but it's great. Our house is rebuilt and it's amazing. And I've been to their houses. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. Yes, 100%. But this is a totally separate thing. We're talking over here. It's not a Uzi fire. This is a totally separate thing. And hopefully you guys can play this recording for me in few years and say, hey, you were totally off. I really hope you'll be able to do that.
But by the way, I've chatted with Spencer, and he wants to come on the pod. He wants for a couple of the reports to come out first, so we'll have more things to talk about. But I'm a big fan of what he's doing, because I think he's doing it in a way that needs to be done, which is very confrontational. It's against some very, very powerful folks, and it's what I talked about with dealing with bullies. You just have to kind of punch him in the face, and he's doing that method, and I really do think in this case it will work. And just back on our original point, we don't have to agree with everything our guests come on, and I hope that Rick Caruso does come on the pod. We don't have to agree. We probably agree on 90% of the stuff. But let's about the 10%. Let's talk about it. I think that's the whole point of this podcast, and I think it's just about being genuine and talking about it and airing it out. You don't like it, I like it. Let's talk about it. And I really do hope that he comes on, because I do have a lot of faith in him still. I think he's the best shot at what we've got at competent governance that's coming up in the election. So I really hope he comes on and we can talk about it, on with every issue on its merit.
Well, we'll leave it there. This has been a really good podcast episode, I think, just airing a lot of feelings about things. Want to reiterate what Ron said. We want Rick Caruso to come on. Please stop delaying and come on the podcast. We also have other people who have expressed an interest in coming on, like Spencer Pratt, like other people, and building companies. All kinds of people want to come on, but we really want to make sure that we can get the people who can make the biggest difference in our lives as well. So with that, visit us at 3homelessguys.com for more episodes, and write to us, pod@3homelessguys.com.
Subscribe.
Oh, and subscribe and click
on all
everything.
the channels.
All the channels.
It helps
Yeah.
visibility.
Yeah.
Send it to your friends, and let's get the word out there.
All right. So for Ron, for Oren, and for myself, until next time, stay strong.
Thanks for listening to Three Homeless Guys. If this episode hit home, please subscribe to our channel. Check out 3homelessguys.com for RSS feeds to your favorite streaming service. Follow us on social and share this with a friend who needs to hear it. Drop us a review or shoot us a message at pod@3homelessguys.com. We'd love to hear from you. Stay strong, and we'll catch you next time.